Derek Chauvin's been found guilty! Derek Chauvin has been found guilty! Say his name! Say his name! Say his name! Say his name! Say his name!
It is important to remember that the overwhelming majority of police officers in this country are good people who put their lives on the line to protect all of us, no matter what color we are. But it is also true that Black Americans are much more likely than white Americans to be killed by police. Chief Justice and Homeland Security correspondent Jeff Becasue spoke with a grieving father who says this has to stop.
Your son was painted out to be a criminal.
Right. If a police officer says it, then it must be true.
That your son was a threat.
Right. That he, he was a threat. If
this black young man was a threat.
Right.
D. Thomas, somber and soft-spoken, carries a kind of grief that's hard to comprehend. On a summer night in 2016, his 22-year-old son, Kane Rogers, was driving near his Atlanta neighborhood and would soon encounter Officer James Burns behind the wheel of his police cruiser. Burns was responding to a call that someone was jumping fences. Burns claimed that Kane Rogers came barreling toward him. But the dash cam video, which wasn't released for 4 years, tells a different story. What did that tape show? Did it show that Kane was going right for that police officer, that the police officer was justified in feeling that his life was under threat? Is that what it showed?
Nah, I didn't see that at all. I didn't see that.
What did you see?
I just saw my son had already passed this officer.
So it wasn't as if the officer, from what it looks like in the video, doesn't look like he shot this way, which means something's coming at him.
Right.
It looks like he shot that way.
He did. I'm not an expert, but I think it's almost impossible to shoot and shoot someone in the side of the head from the front of the vehicle. This vehicle had already passed James Burns. James Burns took it upon himself to be judge, jury, and executioner.
Burns insists that he is innocent and is awaiting trial, charged with felony murder. The Atlanta Police Department declared his actions unnecessary and unreasonable. That brings little comfort to D. Thomas, who joins a long and tragic list. Those who've seen the final moments of a loved one captured by a dash cam, body cam, or bystander. To name a few, Demir Rice,
now!
Sandra Bland,
Get out of the car!
For a failure to signal.
Orlando Castile,
And the officer just shot him in his arm.
and Dante Wright earlier this month.
If we didn't ask police to do every darn thing, there wouldn't be guns showing up to every darn place.
Philip Atiba Goff is a Yale University psychologist who studies policing and racial bias. What are these incidents that we're seeing unfold on dash cam? What do they show?
So it's tempting to say that what they show is a disregard for black life among American law enforcement. And I think that that's not fair.
You don't think it's fair?
No, because I think that means that it's just law enforcement.
What do you think the entire picture, the entire problem is?
What we're seeing on those cameras is not just individual bad training, individual bad decision, individual malice in some cases. It's what we as a country have decided to tolerate.
Goff sees another link common among police killings. Many of them involve minor infractions, like the death in 2014 of Eric Garner, suspected of selling cigarettes on a New York street.
Why do we need an armed response when the issue is a speeding ticket, expired tags, loose cigarettes, a fake 20? There's no reason for you to introduce a badge and a gun to that, because that doesn't have a chance of de-escalating the situation. So it's not the case that black and brown communities are calling out for abolition of the police per se. But there's got to be a common sense response that when you're sending someone whose job it is to possibly take away liberty or, God forbid, life, and the issue was you had cigarettes and you were selling them individually instead of in packs, that's an overreaction.
In some of those cases, police say they felt threatened by a black suspect.
Do you think the officer would have taken that shot if the driver of that car was white?
I can't say whether or not he would have, but I do feel like, not only in my son's case, but in cases all over the country, that too many times, so many times, African Americans are prejudged by officers.
An opinion bolstered by statistics. According to a Harvard study, blacks in America are 3 times more likely than whites to be killed by police. Nicole Hannah-Jones, creator of the 1619 Project, says what we're seeing now has a disturbing link to the past.
In certain parts of the country, modern policing has direct lineage to the slave patrols. The slave patrols deputized white Americans to stop, to question, to search any black person who was walking about to ensure that enslaved people were not escaping or going in places where they weren't supposed to be. I really think that it is difficult to reform an institution that in many ways is doing the exact function that it was created to do.
It was all supposed to change after Ferguson in 2014. Protests lasted for months after 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot and killed by Officer Darren Wilson. Wilson was cleared of wrongdoing, but the outrage fueled the Black Lives Matter movement and calls for real police reform. Body cams became common practice, but instead of solving problems, they exposed them.
Roll to your stomach now!
Do you remember Ferguson? Because I think you do. And I know you enough to know you also remember LA. And you may not be old enough to remember Watts and Newark and Chicago and Tulsa. But we've been doing this for generations. And in between each time, it's like the whole country forgets.
Right now, it is the videos that are moving millions of people to action. And then there is Dee Thomas. 5 years after losing his son, he is left with more questions than answers.
When are they going to change the rules by which an officer can operate? When are they going to change the laws that give officers, basically give them murder permits?